wonderful Dean Terry Schwartz. I love you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak today to this great class, and thank you for those words. I'm tired just listening to them. Watch me give a boring speech now. Oh, gosh. It's just, I'm so emotional seeing you all. I'm so proud of you. Welcome, distinguished alumni, esteemed faculty, proud family members, and devoted friends who are here to celebrate the spectacular class of 2014. For decades, UCLA School for Theater, Film, and Television has nurtured extraordinary and innovative voices. And today, this class joins that rich history as they begin to create their own rich futures. Since the dawn of civilization, people have recorded their experiences with whatever materials were available. 17,000 years ago, early humans in caves in southern France applied mineral pigments to the walls, and if they didn't have pigments, they would etch with sharp stones the figures and symbols straight into the rock to depict a primitive narrative. 850 generations later, we can still gaze upon those works, and even when the meaning is rather murky, kind of like David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, we understand the impetus, don't we? Everyone in this class shares the compulsion to capture a moment, a feeling, a concept. You know, we are the only species that thrives on narrative. It's in our DNA. It's what makes us human. It's through narrative that we become community. The universe is made up of atoms. Human beings are made up of stories. Native Americans say, tell me a fact and I'll forget. Tell me a belief and I'll remember. Tell me a story and I will understand. So it's a noble endeavor to make storytelling your profession. Stories can instruct, alter opinions, uplift, and even improve sex. I have witnessed the transformative power of movies, and I thought I'd illustrate it with 4 examples. Coming Home, The China Syndrome, 9 to 5, and On Golden Pond, total coincidences. I produced and starred in all those films. Coming Home took root after I shared a stage at an anti-war rally at Claremont College with Ron Kovic. Now, most of you know the broad strokes of Ron's story because it was made into a movie called Born on the 4th of July, starring Tom Cruise. Ron volunteered to fight in Vietnam, believing in the rightness of that war. On Ron's second tour of duty, he was wounded by shrapnel and came back paralyzed from the chest down. Only after returning home did he realize he'd been lied to and sent to fight a war that never should have been fought, and he transformed from gung-ho hawk to anti-war activist. And that day at Claremont College, several thousand students were there, and I heard Ron say to them, I may have lost my body, but I've gained my mind. I will never forget that moment. I had already spent several years meeting with and interviewing Vietnam veterans and their wives, and I wanted to make a movie depicting what they were going through. I wanted to draw attention to their plight. And when Ron said that, I immediately thought I could wrap a film around that concept. Because I also wanted to depict the changes that women were going through in the 60s, I wanted to create a character for myself who starts off as a straight-laced, unquestioning, unfulfilled wife of Bruce Dern, who was an officer. She slowly changes as she develops a relationship with a vet like Ron Kovic. There's a love scene at the beginning with my able-bodied husband, Dern, just before he shipped over to Vietnam, and it's clear that I don't climax. Then I fall in love with John Voight in his wheelchair, and you see me loosen up, both my attitude and the way I look. And even though he's paralyzed from the waist down, when the time comes, guess what? That's right, I climax. It was one of the hottest love scenes. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It was one of the hottest love scenes to come down the pike in memory. And later, boy, was I thrilled when Ron Kovic told me that it had improved his sex life. I've heard that from others too. But the personal story resonated with vets in general, and when the Veterans Administration conducted a poll of the best war movies, Coming Home tied with Green Berets for most popular. I wonder if John Wayne improved people's sex life. Anyway. I wanted to tell a story about the plight of veterans, and we did. But what was smart is that we sugar-coated it by wrapping it within the genre of a love story. Now, while we were shooting Coming Home, I was trying to develop a script about the issue of nuclear energy based on the story of Karen Silkwood. I never did crack it, but it turned out to be a really good idea. Meryl Streep did it. Anyway, knowing I was interested in this issue, Sherry Lansing, who was an executive at Columbia Pictures at the time, sent me a script for the China Syndrome. It was a suspense thriller written for Michael Douglas, Jack Lemmon, and Richard Dreyfuss. But Dreyfuss had just dropped out, so they approached me. Same way I got the role of Barbarella. Our writer, Jim Bridges, and I got excited about adding a gender twist to the story of a nuclear power plant's near meltdown. It was 1979, and news was just starting to become infotainment, when men were given all the serious stories and women reporters were relegated to the fluff pieces. That movie had a lot of layers, but still the message was clear about the dangers of nuclear energy. In fact, my favorite ex-husband, Ted Turner, he said that it was that movie that turned him against nuclear power. But again, because it was a suspense thriller, people came to see it who didn't necessarily care about the issues that we were dealing with. As the Vietnam War was winding down, an activist friend named Karen Nussbaum had turned her attention to organizing women office workers. She would tell me stories whenever we got together about how they were treated in the workplace, constantly subjected to sexual harassment, men they had trained constantly being promoted past them, women earning much less for doing the same work that men were doing, and I thought, this is an issue that needs to be exposed. I saw it as a serious movie until I saw Lily Tomlin's one-woman show, In Search of Intelligent Life in the Universe. I was smitten by Lily, and I knew I wanted her to play one of the secretaries. And on the way home from that theater, and I swear this is a true story, I turned on the car radio, and Dolly Parton was singing Two Doors Down, and my hair stood on end, and I thought, oh my Lord, what if Dolly Parton played a third secretary? Wouldn't she be a great secretary, trying to get at the keys underneath the overhang? And she'd never been in a movie before, and the producer part of me knew that would be it would be really good. It would be very successful. Except one thing, I realized the movie's going to have to be a comedy. Colin Higgins was hired to write and direct, and he and I flew to Cleveland to meet some women that my friend Karen Nussbaum had organized, about 40 women who were office workers. And after they'd all had a chance to tell their personal stories, Colin suddenly asked, do any of you ever fantasize what you'd like to do to your bosses? I mean, I can't repeat here the things that were said. But within an hour, we had our hook for the movie. 9 to 5 succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. Dolly's song became a movement anthem, also won an Oscar. The National Association of Women Office Workers became District 925, part of the Service Employees International Union, and this time we conveyed struggle through laughter. See, serious doesn't always have to be heavy. The great Preston Sturgis knew this, and I encourage you all to see or to revisit, if you haven't seen already, his great Sullivan's Travels. We need laughter now, as well as great change. My last example is also the most successful movie that I produced. When I bought the play on Golden Pond as a vehicle for my father and myself to act together in, every single studio in Hollywood turned it down, everyone. We had to go to England, to Sir Lou Grade in England, to get financing. Nobody in this country wanted to make a movie about a couple old people and a kid. Everybody worked for scale with a big piece of the back end, and the movie got made and was a blockbuster. Roger Ebert later praised on Golden Pond for, quote, playing witness to human growth and change. He wrote that after seeing the movie, quote, I left the theater feeling good and warm and with a certain resolve to mend my own relationships and learn to start listening better, unquote. Now, we don't always get the chance, the luxury of making art that matters. So if you ever get that opportunity, grab it. My father won his only Oscar for On Golden Pond, and it was his last film. 4 very different movies. And what I learned was, if you want to make a story about an issue, and this can be true for television or theater as well, wrap it in a style that makes it possible to deliver your message to people who may not have wanted to receive it. Your message will be cast to a wider audience. Your movie will have a better chance of making money. Of course, did I ever learn this the hard way? Because we learn most things the hard way. By failing. Or maybe you're too young to know that yet, although Ted Sim kind of nailed it. Show me somebody with a long career in this business, and I'll show you somebody with a lot of hits and misses. And instead of looking around for someone else to blame for your failures, own them, examine them, learn from them, because they're what teach us. It may be a little late to mention this, but you probably don't want to go into TV or movies unless you enjoy being collaborative. Persistence helps, too. The Doll Maker was a project that took me 12 years to realize. I intended it to be a feature, but it faltered year after year when writer after writer struggled to boil down the majestic novel that it was based on. And then Roots was aired on television to an audience of 35 million people, and I thought, wow, that's more people than have seen all my movies combined. So, although back in the 80s, film and television were 2 very different worlds, I decided to try and make it as a TV movie. The day after I won an Oscar for Coming Home, I carried the statue with me when I went into a meeting with Brandon Tartikoff, president of ABC Television. You know, hey, I figured a little added bling wouldn't hurt. You know, use every tool in your toolbox to get what you want done, right? I asked if he would finance The Doll Maker as a TV movie. He said yes and gave us 150 minutes of airtime to tell our story, and I won an Emmy for it, so that was a happy ending. Listen, 12 years is a long time to wait, and frankly, at my age, I can't do that anymore. But for those starting out, don't lose hope. Keep a passion project on the back burner and then wait for just the right take, the right partner, the right outlet. You probably know that the story of Unbroken was first optioned by Universal in 1956. It finally found its director with Angelina Jolie and will be out this Christmas. And I can't leave out theater. You know, as Terry said, I went back to Broadway several years ago after 46 years of absence with 33 Variations by Moises Kaufman. It was a story that brought the audience the great Beethoven, that played alongside a story about a musicologist, contemporary musicologist, that was my character, who was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. But the play spoke of passion, the importance of digging deeply into the minutiae of life to see the beauty of what at first can seem banal. It used music, sound effects, visual projections, and an astonishing set, which won a Tony, and showed me that theater, perhaps more than any other art form, can be nonlinear, multidimensional, and revolutionary. Before I close, I need to talk about women. I wish I didn't have to. I wish we had achieved equality and I could talk about, I don't know, anything else. But, you know, here's where we stand. The Women's Media Center, which, as Terry said, was co-founded, I co-founded it with Gloria Steinem and Robin Morgan, and by the way, Terry sits on the board. We compile statistics on the 250 top grossing movies in 2013. Of the directors, executive producers, writers, cinematographers, and editors who worked on those films, women accounted for only 13%, a number that is slightly lower than the 1998 figures. We are moving in the wrong direction. And this equality has a profound effect. People who are not part of shaping our culture's narrative come to feel less than. They are poorer for it, and the culture is poorer for it too. Storytelling must incorporate different perspectives. A broader share of humanity will always produce better art, and it's smart business too. Frank Capra once said, "Movies should be a positive expression that there is hope, love, mercy, justice, and charity. It is the filmmaker's responsibility to emphasize the positive qualities of humanity by showing the triumph of the individual over adversities," unquote. I deeply believe this to be true. You cannot underestimate the impact of telling stories. Whether you're illuminating the past or capturing the present, you have a chance to shape the future. Make the most of it, and it will make the most of you. Congratulations.